They said the Hale family built their fortune on blood. Old money, older secrets. People in town still whispered about them like the legend hadn't already rusted with time. But when your father's company is days from collapse and the bank calls every morning like a clock striking doom, you stop caring about legends. You sign the papers, put on the white dress, and hope the monster in the story isn't real. That's what I told myself as the car wound up the hill toward Hale Manor, fog licking at the tires like fingers that didn't want me to reach the top. My name is Lena Carter. 18. Senior year supposed to start next week. Instead, I was marrying a man I'd never met. A man everyone called the Paralyzed King. Dad's hands trembled on the steering wheel. He tried to smile, the kind of smile people use when they're begging you not to hate them. He's a good man, Lena. He'll take care of you. It's just business until things get better. Business. That's what my life had become, one long transaction. My mother's bracelet clinked against my wrist, her last gift before the cancer took her. I pressed my thumb against it, grounding myself in the sound, pretending I could still hear her laugh. The gates opened with a mechanical groan, tall iron spears splitting the fog. Hale Manor wasn't just a house, it was a statement, a fortress of stone and silence. Windows glared down like watchful eyes. Somewhere in the back of my mind, something whispered that every story that starts like this never ends the way you expect. The butler didn't speak when he opened the door. He just nodded toward the marble hallway that stretched like an artery into the dark. My heels clicked, echoing back too loudly. I swear I could feel the air thicken with every step, like the house was deciding whether or not to accept me. Then he appeared. Ethan Hale. The photographs in the tabloids hadn't done him justice. They'd shown a man broken, cold, detached. But in person, he was impossible to look away from. Tall even sitting in that wheelchair, shoulders cut like stone beneath a black shirt, eyes the color of a storm ready to break. Silver. Chirped. A flash of light inside shadow. "Miss Carter," he said, and I wasn't ready for the way his voice filled the room, low, steady, with the kind of quiet power that made you forget how to breathe. I managed to nod. "Lena. Please, call me Lena." He studied me, gaze slow and deliberate, like he was memorizing something no one else could see. "Lena," he repeated softly, and something in the way he said my name felt like a promise and a warning tangled together. The silence stretched. Somewhere above us, a clock ticked once, twice, before stopping altogether. "I assume your father explained the terms?" he asked. My pulse jumped. "He told me you'd help save our company. And that you'd be my wife." His tone didn't change, no warmth, no cruelty. Just fact. "Yes." The word felt heavy in my mouth. Ethan nodded once. "Then let's not pretend this is something it isn't. You're here because you need me. And he paused, jaw tightening. "I need someone who won't run." His words hung there, echoing off marble and glass. "Won't run from what?" Before I could ask, the wind outside roared, rattling the windows. A storm, sudden and wild. The lights flickered, and for a heartbeat, the air crackled with static. I swear I saw the faintest movement in his legs. Then darkness blinked it away. Dinner was quiet. The staff moved like ghosts, placing plates, never meeting my eyes. Every sound felt amplified, the scrape of silverware, the uneven rhythm of my breath, the faint hum that seemed to follow Ethan wherever he went. When he caught me staring, he didn't look away. "People like stories," he said. "They need to explain what they don't understand. The accident, the chair, the rumors. You've heard them all." I swallowed hard. "Some. Then let me make one thing clear." His voice softened but lost none of its weight. "There are truths in this world that burn when touched. Stay away from them, Lena." It wasn't a threat. It was something else, almost protective, almost pleading. Later that night, I stood by my window, staring down at the city lights far below. I could still feel that strange current in the air, like static before lightning. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. And then, clear, sharp, impossible, a howl split the night. Low and aching, more animal than anything that should exist this close to downtown. My heart stopped. Another howl answered it. I looked toward the woods behind the manor, the dark tree line shivering under moonlight. For a second, I thought I saw movement, a silver flash between the branches, and the same electricity that had clung to Ethan earlier brushed across my skin. Was it the wind? My imagination? Or something watching me back? The house creaked as if breathing. I turned away, trying to shake it off, but the sound followed me, soft, rhythmic, like footsteps pacing the hallway outside my room. When I opened the door, there was nothing. Only cold air and the faint scent of rain. Still, I whispered into the silence, "I won't run." And somewhere, far off, a whisper seemed to answer. So that's how it began. My marriage to the paralyzed Alpha King. I thought I was walking into a contract. I didn't know I was walking into a curse. If you've made it this far, take a breath and hit that subscribe button. You'll want to remember where this story started before everything you think you know begins to change. I woke the next morning to the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, just empty. Hale Manor breathed differently in daylight. The walls seemed less alive, the shadows more deliberate, as if every corner had secrets it refused to share before sunset. Breakfast had been laid out on the long dining table, but not a single chair had been moved. Steam curled from a pot of coffee that someone must have poured only minutes before I came in, yet the room was deserted. My reflection wavered in the silverware. It looked back at me like a stranger wearing my face. "Mrs. Hale," a voice murmured. I turned to see the butler, Mr. Green, I'd learned last night, standing at the threshold. Thin, pale, and careful with every word. "Mr. Hale is indisposed this morning. He prefers not to be disturbed until evening." "Is he all right?" "He will be," Green said, and something in the way he avoided my eyes told me it wasn't the whole truth. "If you need anything, ring the bell twice. The staff will come." He vanished before I could thank him. I sat down, tried to eat, but the food tasted like dust. Maybe nerves, maybe something else. The house hummed faintly, as if its heart still beat beneath the stone floors. By noon, I was exploring the corridors just to stay sane. Paintings lined the walls, portraits of Hale's long dead, each pair of eyes following me with unnerving focus. I passed doors sealed with iron locks, others marked with symbols faintly carved into the wood. The more I wandered, the more I felt like a trespasser in a museum built for ghosts. Outside the tall windows, the forest spread in every direction, a dark sea of pine and fog. The city below seemed impossibly far away. How could anyone hear that wolf last night, this high up? When dusk settled, the staff began closing shutters, locking doors, dousing every light except the hallway sconces. I asked one of the maids, "Ma?" She froze, eyes wide, hands trembling on the curtains. "It's just house rules, ma'am. Always has been." "But why?" She looked at the floor. "Because some things here don't stay asleep." Her words clung to me long after she hurried off. Ethan didn't appear at dinner. I waited anyway, the clock ticking louder with each minute. A storm gathered over the forest, wind bending the trees until they groaned. When lightning flashed through the window, I thought I saw movement near the terrace, a blur of silver darting across the lawn. By midnight, the mansion was wrapped in silence again. I should have gone to bed, but something pulled me toward the east wing, the part one hadn't explored. My footsteps echoed too sharply on the marble. I stopped outside Ethan's room. Light bled under the door, flickering, uneven. Then I heard it. A sound that didn't belong to any human throat. Low, ragged breathing. A growl, restrained but close. My heart climbed into my throat. I leaned closer. There was the unmistakable scrape of metal, then a dull thud, like something heavy striking the wall. "Ethan?" I whispered. No answer. Only that same strangled sound, somewhere between pain and fury. The doorknob was cold under my hand. I turned it just an inch. The vibration on the other side grew sharper, like the air itself shuddered. And then silence. I stepped back, every instinct screaming to run, but curiosity rooted me in place. The smell reached me first, iron and rain. Blood. When dawn finally bled through the curtains, I hadn't slept. I waited until the hall lights flickered on before pushing the door open. It wasn't locked anymore. Ethan sat by the window, motionless, back to me. His wheelchair faced the forest, sunlight cutting around him like a halo that didn't quite fit. The carpet beneath his hand was torn, the wood gouged in deep, curved streaks, claw marks. Real ones. Fresh. "Ethan." He turned his head slowly. His eyes caught the light, and for a heartbeat, they weren't silver. They were amber. But unhuman. Then he blinked, and the color was gone. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "I heard something last night." "You heard the wind." That wasn't wind. A muscle worked in his jaw. "This house plays tricks. It preys on nerves. You'll get used to it." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to call it nerves, dreams, imagination. But when I looked toward the terrace doors, I saw the smear of blood on the glass and the faint trail leading out into the fog. He followed my gaze, his voice dropping to a whisper. "If you value sleep, Lena, don't ever follow where that leads." Then he turned away, dismissing me with the calm of a man barely holding something back. I left the room shaking. The corridor seemed narrower than before, the air heavier. Behind me, I heard the faint scrape of metal again, the sound of his chair moving, or maybe the sound of claws against the floor. Outside, the wind howled through the pines, almost like a voice calling a name I hadn't yet learned to fear. And for the first time since the wedding, I realized I might not be living in that house. It might be living in me. Sleep refused to come. The house seemed to hum beneath my skin, its rhythm syncing with my heartbeat until I couldn't tell where I ended and it began. The memory of the claw marks on Ethan's floorboards played over and over in my head. I'd traced them that morning with my fingertips, edges rough, splinters lifting like torn veins in the wood. Nothing about them felt human. By midnight, fog pressed thick against the window panes, muting the world outside. I sat up in bed, restless, every sense alert. Somewhere down the hall, faint wheels rolled across the marble. Ethan's chair. But the sound wasn't steady. It was uneven, broken by soft footfalls. Footfalls, not wheels. My pulse quickened. I pushed my door open just enough to see the hallway flooded in pale moonlight. At first, nothing. Then, out of the east corridor, he appeared. Ethan. He wasn't in the wheelchair. He was walking. Barefoot, shirtless, his skin almost luminous under the moonlight. Each movement seemed both painful and perfect, like his body was fighting itself to obey. His eyes were half open, unfocused, fixed on something far beyond me. Sleepwalking. I whispered his name, afraid to startle him. He didn't hear. He moved past me silently, drawn toward the wide window at the end of the hall. When he reached it, he touched the glass as though testing it, then looked up at the full moon hanging heavy over the trees. For a moment, something in his expression broke, pure anguish, pure longing. Then he stumbled, collapsed, soundless. I ran to him, heart pounding. Ethan, Ethan, wake up. No response. His skin was burning hot, breath shallow, hands trembling as though the air itself burned him. I tried to lift him, but he was impossibly heavy, dead weight in my arms. As the first light of dawn spilled into the corridor, his breathing steadied. The heat faded. His body went still again, too still. When I blinked, his wheelchair stood a few feet away, where there had been only emptiness moments ago. By the time the sun rose fully, Ethan was back in his chair as though nothing had happened. When I found him in the library later, he was reading quietly, one leg covered with a blanket, his face an unreadable mask. "You were walking last night," I said before I could stop myself. He looked up, eyes cool and gray. "That's impossible. I saw you. You. Lena." My name was a warning now. He set the book down, fingers tightening on the armrest. "There are rooms in this house you do not go near. Doors you do not open. I'm telling you this for your safety." "But what's in them?" He hesitated. For the first time, I saw something flicker behind that calm exterior: fear. Not for himself, but for me. "The East Wing," he said finally. "Stay out of it. And whatever you do, never open the red door." His voice dropped so low it almost vanished. "Promise me." I nodded, but the word promise burned on my tongue. Because the truth was, I'd already decided I couldn't keep it. That night, the wind howled again through the trees. I told myself I would sleep. I told myself curiosity was a dangerous thing. But the house had other plans. The hallway toward the East Wing was colder than the rest of the mansion, air damp and heavy. The floor creaked like an old voice murmuring, "Turn back." Still I went on. At the end stood the door he'd mentioned. A deep shade of red that looked almost wet in the low light, like it had been painted with something darker than pigment. The knob was iron, cold enough to sting my palm. For a long moment, I hesitated. Then I turned it. The door swung inward with a soft sigh. The room beyond was enormous but barren, walls lined with shadowed alcoves. Shafts of moonlight slipped through the high windows, cutting across the floor in silver bars. The scent hit me first: iron, rain, and something wild. I took a few steps forward. Against the far wall hung thick iron fixtures, old, tarnished, useless now, but the kind of thing meant to hold something strong. My breath came faster. On the table beside them lay a single object, a leather collar, worn and torn at the edges, with an engraving on the clasp. Ethan Hale. A sound behind me froze my blood, the soft click of the door closing. I turned, heart hammering. Ethan stood in the doorway, his face unreadable, eyes lit by that eerie silver again. "I told you not to come here," he said quietly. "I had to know." He stepped closer, the moonlight catching the faint tremor in his hands. "Knowing isn't the same as understanding." "Then help me understand." For a moment, I thought he would. He looked at me like he wanted to, like words pressed against the back of his throat but refused to escape. Then he closed the distance between us, gently lifted the collar from the table, and held it up between us. "This," he said, voice breaking just slightly, "is what keeps monsters leashed." He turned away before I could speak again. As he left, I could have sworn I heard him whisper, barely audible, "Even if the monster is me." The red door shut behind him, sealing the truth back inside. I stood there alone, the scent of rain and iron thick around me, realizing that whatever had paralyzed Ethan Hale had nothing to do with broken bones, and everything to do with the moon. The sky broke open that night. Rain crashed against the windows like fists, thunder crawling through the walls until the whole house seemed to breathe with it. Hale Manor had always felt watchful, but now it felt awake. Alive. The staff rushed through the halls, bolting shutters and whispering prayers they thought I couldn't hear. When I asked what was happening, Mara's face went pale. "It's the full moon," she whispered, as if even the words carried weight. "We stay inside. We lock everything. Don't leave your room, Mrs. Hale. Whatever you hear, whatever you think you see, stay in the light. But when the lights flickered, the warning became meaningless. At first it was only a tremor in the distance, then the crash of trees bending in the wind. Somewhere deep in the mansion, metal groaned. The generator died with a single sputtering gasp, plunging everything into darkness. I lit the nearest candle, the flame trembling the way my hands did. Every shadow stretched longer, wider, until the hall looked like a throat-swallowing light. Somewhere down the corridor, something heavy moved, slow, deliberate. "Ethan!" I called. My voice disappeared into the roar of the storm. I found him near the grand staircase, still in his chair, staring toward the tall windows that shook under the wind. Lightning lit his face for a heartbeat, eyes bright, jaw tight, every muscle in his body straining against stillness. "Go upstairs," he said. "Now." "What's happening?" He turned to me. The silver in his eyes wasn't reflection anymore. It was light, alive, burning. "You don't understand. I can't control it much longer." The words barely left his mouth before another tremor ran through the house. The chandelier swayed overhead. The candle in my hand sputtered. "Control what?" I whispered. He closed his eyes, breathing ragged. "The spell. It breaks when the moon is full." Outside, lightning split the sky again. For a moment the storm froze, everything illuminated, rain hanging mid-air, leaves caught mid-flight. And in that impossible stillness, I saw him rise. Ethan Hale stood. His chair rolled back a few inches, forgotten. He stood without effort, every line of pain erased from his body. But the look on his face wasn't triumph. It was terror. "You have to leave," he said, voice cracking under the strain of something larger than words. "Please, Lena. Run before I hurt you." I shook my head. "I'm not leaving you like this." He stepped toward me, each movement rigid, fighting an invisible force. The candle flickered between us. His shadow on the wall shivered, broad shoulders, the suggestion of something vast curling at its edges. "This is who I am," he said. "A curse in a man's skin. My family made a bargain generations ago, power for blood. Now it's bound to the moon. When it rises, daylight leaves me paralyzed. Night gives it back and takes everything else." Thunder rolled again, closer now, like the heavens answering him. I could see the strain tearing through him, the effort it took just to speak, to hold on to himself. "You think I don't know fear?" I whispered. "You think I don't see it every time you look at me? But you saved me from this house before I even understood what it was. Let me save you from yourself." He shook his head violently. "You don't know what you're asking." The air crackled. Wind burst through the broken window, extinguishing the candle. Darkness swallowed us whole, except for the faint glow in his eyes. They weren't silver anymore. They were molten, alive, unrestrained. Every instinct screamed to run, but my heart refused. I took a step closer, then another, until I could feel the heat radiating off his skin. The storm seemed to bend around us, thunder pausing mid-growl. He whispered, "If I touch you, I'll lose control. Then let me be the reason you don't." For a breathless moment, he stood still. The air between us pulsed with the rhythm of the rain outside. And then his hand lifted, slow, trembling, to cup my cheek. The contact was fire and electricity, pain and relief all at once. He flinched like it burned him, but didn't pull away. The power that had been clawing at him quieted, just for that heartbeat. Outside, the wind howled. The storm finally broke into silence so pure it felt unnatural. He leaned closer, voice raw. "You should be afraid of me." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm not." Something in him softened. The light in his eyes dimmed to human gray again. His knees buckled, strength leaving him as suddenly as it had come. I caught him before he fell, his body trembling, heavy with exhaustion. When dawn finally cracked through the clouds, he lay in my arms, still and pale, the curse retreating with the night. I brushed the wet hair from his forehead and whispered the only promise I could make. I'm not running, Ethan. Not now. Not ever. And somewhere deep within the walls of that house, the storm answered back. A low rumble that sounded almost like a sigh of relief, or a warning that the night had only just begun. Morning came slow and gray, the kind of light that doesn't warm anything. Ethan hadn't spoken since the storm broke. He sat in the wheelchair again, pale and still, staring out the window at the dripping forest as if counting every drop of rain. The night's chaos lingered in the corners, shattered glass, a toppled candle holder, the smell of lightning still burned into the air. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but the silence between us felt fragile, like glass stretched too thin. Finally, I said the one thing I could. You tried to protect me. His jaw tightened. You shouldn't have stayed. But I did. He looked at me then, really looked, and the mask he always wore cracked just enough for me to see the exhaustion beneath. You don't know what it costs me to fight it, Lena. The spell binds my body by day, but it doesn't cage what's inside. Every full moon, it claws through whatever's left of my control. Who did this to you? He hesitated. The storm outside had passed, but another kind gathered in his expression. People your father once trusted. The words hit like a stone thrown into still water. My father. The Carters were part of a circle, a company built on old magic disguised as business. They financed the ritual that sealed my power after the wars between our kind. My family's bloodline was too strong, too dangerous. They wanted control. I sank into the nearest chair, pulse pounding. So my marriage, this deal, it wasn't just about money. No, he said softly. It was about finishing what they started. The weight of it pressed down until breathing felt like effort. I thought of my father's trembling hands, the way he'd avoided my eyes when I signed the papers. Guilt prickled through me, guilt and something else, something fierce and protective that had no name yet. Ethan turned away, voice quieter. Now you understand why I kept my distance. I stood, crossed to him before I could stop myself. You don't have to keep it anymore. He didn't move, but his eyes flicked up, uncertain. You should hate me. I don't. He laughed, one sharp, hollow sound. Then you don't know me. Maybe, I said. But I know loneliness when I see it. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then, slowly, he reached out and brushed his fingers across my wrist. It was barely a touch, but it anchored something deep inside both of us. Days passed. The house felt different, quieter, but not as cold. We spoke more, fragments at first, then whole conversations that stretched past midnight. I learned that he loved old books and thunderstorms, that he'd once played piano before his hands started to tremble under the spell's weight. Sometimes he caught me staring at him, and a hint of a smile would ghost across his face before he turned away. I started to forget where fear ended and fascination began. But peace in Hale Manor never lasted. It started with a scent on the wind, sharp, metallic, wrong. The dogs in the lower yard began to bark until the staff dragged them inside. The forest, usually alive with sound, went silent. Ethan stiffened when the wind shifted, his eyes darkening to steel. He's here, he murmured. Who? Marcus. He spoke the name like a wound reopened. He was once alpha beside me before the curse. He wanted power, not balance. When the spell bound me, he saw his chance to lead. Lightning flared again on the horizon, distant but real. Ethan wheeled toward the door, already planning something. You can't face him, I said. Not like this. He stopped. You don't understand. If he's here, it's not to fight me. It's to find you, Me. He'll expose what you are, what your blood means, to the pack. He'll use you to break what's left of me. Fear crawled up my spine, but it wasn't just for myself. Then tell me what to do. Ethan's voice was steady now, the calm before something inevitable. Stay inside the manor. Trust no one but Mara. If I don't come back before dawn... I cut him off. Don't finish that sentence. He gave a small, haunted smile. You really are your mother's daughter. Before I could ask what that meant, he was gone into the rain, swallowed by the trees. The house groaned under another gust of wind. Hours passed with only the rhythm of the storm and my thoughts clawing at each other. I stood at the window, watching for any sign of him, until the fog thickened and the forest blurred into one endless gray wall. Movement. Two figures, shadows circling each other just beyond the tree line. I couldn't see clearly, only the violent flashes of motion, the surge and retreat like waves colliding. A roar echoed across the valley, low, guttural, not quite human. The windows rattled with it. I pressed my hand to the glass, whispering his name, though I knew he couldn't hear. Somewhere deep in the woods, the noise stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the fight itself. When the door finally burst open near dawn, Ethan stumbled inside, drenched, pale, eyes blazing silver. Blood streaked his sleeve, but it wasn't his. He's gone, he said simply. For now. I reached for him. He caught my hand, holding it against his heart. His pulse was erratic, fierce. Lena, he whispered, I don't know how long I can keep them from you. You don't have to, I said. You just have to let me stand beside you. He stared at me for a heartbeat that seemed to last forever, and then, for the first time since I'd met him, Ethan Hale allowed himself to exhale, to believe. Outside, the first light touched the trees. Inside, in the half-dark of the waking house, I felt the shift between us settle into something neither curse nor magic could undo. Whatever was coming, we would face it together. And in the faint distance beyond the forest's edge, a howl rose, not of threat this time, but of promise. The morning after, Marcus's attack should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like the quiet before something worse. The forest was still dripping from the night's rain, the mist curling between the trees like smoke from a dying fire. Ethan hadn't slept. I could tell by the way his hands gripped the armrests of his chair, knuckles white, shoulders tense, as if holding the world in place by sheer will. I made him tea he didn't drink, said words he didn't hear. Every part of him seemed pulled somewhere far away, back into that forest, back into the dark that had made him what he was. When the knock came at the door, it wasn't from one of the staff. The sound was heavier, calculated. Ethan froze. He wouldn't dare, he murmured. But Marcus dared. He stood in the threshold like he'd never left, rain still sliding off his coat, his eyes burning amber. His smile was sharp enough to cut. Alpha, he said with mock respect, or should I call you what you are now, a relic? Ethan didn't flinch. You shouldn't have come back. Marcus tilted his head, gaze flicking toward me. I had to. The girl deserves the truth. My throat tightened. What truth? Ethan's voice hardened. Leave her out of this. Why? Marcus asked. Because you already know she's not who she thinks she is? The silence that followed was a blade suspended between us. Marcus stepped closer, his presence filling the room like smoke. Tell her, Ethan. Tell her what her mother did to you. Ethan didn't speak. He couldn't. So Marcus did it for him. Your mother, Lena Carter, the kind, charitable woman the world adored, was a witch. A powerful one. She's the reason the curse exists. She bound his power under the pretense of saving lives. Said no single alpha should ever hold that kind of strength. The room tilted around me. You're lying. He smiled. You have her eyes. Her blood. Her magic. I shook my head, but something inside me cracked. A half-memory of my mother's whispering voice when I was small, her warnings about the moon, the way candles always flickered when she was upset. Ethan finally spoke, his tone low and dangerous. You expect me to believe she didn't know? I turned to him. Ethan, I swear. But he was already pulling back, fury and heartbreak written across his face. You married me to finish what she started. No, I said, stepping closer. I didn't know. He wheeled back sharply, the motion jagged, defensive. Don't. Every word from your family has been a chain around my throat. Do you have any idea what it's like to feel the world move beneath you and not be able to stand? To watch your own strength rot because of their mercy? His voice cracked on that last word. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't choose this. I didn't know what my mother did, what she was. I love you, Ethan. He looked at me, and for a heartbeat I thought he'd believe it. But then his gaze hardened, retreating behind the walls he'd built long before I arrived. Love is another kind of curse, he said quietly. I didn't remember leaving the house, only the rain on my face and the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in the emptiness. I ran until the forest swallowed me whole. The mist thickened, the path twisting beneath my feet. Branches clawed at my skin. Every breath felt like glass. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away before the grief in his eyes shattered me completely. By the time I realized I wasn't alone, it was too late. Shapes moved between the trees, too fast, too quiet to be human. The air shifted, filled with the scent of iron and something wild. I stumbled back, tripping over roots slick with rain. Marcus stepped out from the fog, the others fanning behind him, eyes glowing faintly gold in the gloom. I told him you carried power, he said. He wouldn't believe me. But your mother's blood doesn't lie. Stay away from me. He smiled, teeth flashing. Why would I? You're the key, Lena. Your magic broke him once. It can break him again. I turned to run, but claws, real claws, closed around my arm, pulling me down into the mud. I screamed, fought, kicked, but there were too many. Their growls rumbled low, hungry. Somewhere in the chaos, Marcus leaned close, his breath hot against my ear. Let's see if the alpha comes for his witch. And that's when it happened. The air changed, sharp and electric, like the split second before lightning strikes. The forest went still, every sound cut off as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then, from miles away, a single howl tore through the silence, low, commanding, furious. The pack froze. Even Marcus's smirk faltered. Another howl answered, closer this time. Then the sound of footsteps, not running, but deliberate, heavy, coming through the trees with the weight of inevitability. Ethan stepped into the clearing. No chair. No hesitation. His clothes were torn from the fight, his eyes burning silver brighter than the moon itself. Power radiated off him, rolling through the ground, bending the air. Let her go, he said, his voice quiet but carrying through every tree. Marcus laughed, though the sound was tight. So the cripple stands. Ethan's gaze flicked to me, softening for the briefest moment, then turned cold again as it landed on Marcus. You shouldn't have touched her. The air rippled. The curse, his prison, snapped like a broken chain. I could feel it in the marrow of my bones, an ancient force tearing free. Wind howled through the clearing. The earth itself seemed to shudder. Marcus lunged, but Ethan moved faster, too fast. The forest blurred around him, silver light trailing in his wake. There was no roar, no scream. Only a flash of motion and then silence. When it was over, Ethan stood alone. The others were gone, melted into shadow or fled into the trees. His breathing was ragged, his body shaking, but he stayed upright. For the first time, truly free. He came to me slowly, as if afraid he might collapse if he stopped moving. I reached for him, and when our hands met, the energy that had filled the air settled. Gentle now, steady, like the earth remembering how to breathe. "I thought I lost you," he said, his voice raw. "You didn't," I whispered. "You never could." He smiled faintly, then glanced down at his own hands, as if still surprised to see them obeying him. "The curse broke when I felt your fear," he said quietly. "Your blood may have bound me once, Lena, but your heart set me free." Somewhere in the forest, dawn began to climb through the fog. The light fell across him, across us, like a promise. For the first time since I'd arrived at Hale Manor, the shadows didn't feel like enemies. They felt like witnesses to something the world had tried to erase. And though I didn't know what would come next, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever bound us now wasn't a curse. It was destiny. The morning after the forest fight was the first one that didn't feel like it belonged to the Hale estate. The house behind us was silent, wounded, its windows blank like eyes that had seen too much. We didn't go back. Ethan drove without speaking, the car slicing through the back roads while mist clung to the hills. His hands were steady on the wheel, though his knuckles stayed white. I watched the curve of his jaw, the faint tremor at the edge of his mouth. He hadn't slept since he'd found me. Every few miles, I'd catch him looking into the rearview mirror, not at the road behind us, but at the forest, as if it might reach for him again. The radio crackled faintly with static, then a voice. "Authorities continue searching for Ethan Hale, missing CEO of Hale Industries, last seen near." He turned it off before it could finish. "They think you're dead," I said quietly. He kept his eyes on the road. "Maybe I am." "You're not," I whispered. He didn't answer, but his hand brushed mine for just a second, enough to tell me he'd heard. The world outside blurred into wilderness and rusted towns. The further we drove, the thinner the air seemed to get, until the city felt like a memory that belonged to someone else. "We're going to her," he said finally. "Who?" "The one who cast the spell. Your mother's friend. The witch who started all of this." My stomach dropped. "You mean Amelia?" He nodded. "She disappeared after your mother died. I think she knows the truth about why the curse bound me, and what it'll take to end it." I didn't ask the question already heavy in my chest, but he answered anyway. "Every curse has a cost, Lena. If it was sealed with your mother's blood, breaking it might demand yours." The words hit like cold water. "You think I'd let that happen?" "I think you don't understand what you're tied to," he said, softer now. "The moon's changing. I can feel it. The curse is unraveling on its own, and if we don't stop it, it'll take you down with me." The road narrowed, twisting up a mountain path swallowed by fog. By the time we reached the top, daylight was fading, the sky bleeding red around the edges like the horizon itself was wounded. A cabin sat at the edge of a cliff, wood gray and leaning, smoke curling faintly from the chimney. The air smelled like cedar and secrets. Amelia was waiting at the door. She hadn't aged the way normal people did. Her hair was white, but her skin was untouched by time, her eyes sharp and clear. "You shouldn't have come," she said before either of us could speak. Ethan's voice was calm, but his body was coiled tight. "Tell her what you did." Amelia looked at me then, really looked, and something flickered across her face, sorrow or recognition. "Your mother swore I'd never have to," she said. "But the moon doesn't keep secrets forever." We went inside. The cabin was filled with candles, each one burning at a different rhythm. The air hummed faintly with power. She poured tea but didn't drink it, her fingers tracing invisible symbols in the air as she spoke. "The curse wasn't meant to punish Ethan," she said finally. "It was meant to contain him. Your mother saw what his power could do, what would happen if the pack turned on itself. She wanted to protect both worlds, human and wolf. Ethan's laugh was sharp, bitter. By chaining me to a chair? By saving your soul, Amelia said quietly. But the spell had a flaw. It tied itself to her blood. When she died, it passed to the next of her line. Her gaze shifted to me. My heart dropped. You mean? She didn't just bind him with magic, Amelia said. She bound him to you. The moment you said, I do, the curse transferred. You became the balance, the reason he could walk again, the reason he couldn't stay away. His power feeds on your life. Ethan stood abruptly, the chair scraping the floor. No. Yes, she said, steady. And if the bond breaks before the blood moon rises, both of you die. The air seemed to drain out of the room. My hands went cold. So if we lift the curse? Amelia nodded slowly. You'll free him, but you'll burn out. The curse will take what it's owed. I looked at Ethan. He wasn't breathing. No, he said finally. We'll find another way. There isn't one, Amelia said gently. The spell ends in blood or it ends in fire. And the moon is almost full. Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon. I caught a glimpse through the window. The sky had gone the color of rust, the moon rising swollen and red like a bleeding heart. Ethan turned to me, voice breaking. We're leaving. Ethan. He didn't let me finish. He grabbed my hand and pulled me outside, into the cold air and the smell of rain. The world felt on edge, vibrating. The forest below shimmered faintly, shapes moving in the distance, wolves, too many to count. Marcus's pack or what was left of it. They're following the bloodline, he said. They can sense what you are now. Lightning split the sky, illuminating his face, torn between fury and fear. I won't let them take you. The first howl broke the night. Then another. Then dozens. The sound surrounded us, closing in. Ethan, I whispered, if Amelia's right, if this ends with my blood, then you have to let me do it. He turned on me, eyes burning. Don't you dare. I just got you back. But if we run, they'll kill us both. Then we run faster. He grabbed my waist and lifted me onto the bike parked beside the cabin. It roared to life beneath us, headlights slicing through the dark. The road wound down the mountain like a black ribbon, rain pelting our faces, the red moon overhead watching like a silent god. Behind us, howls followed, closer now, echoing through the valley. My arms tightened around him as we flew through the storm, trees blurring, heartbeats syncing with the rhythm of the engine. He shouted over the wind, when the moon breaks, so does the spell. I'll find a way to sever it without touching you, I swear it. Ethan, you can't? I can. His voice was pure fire, defiance and love tangled in one impossible vow. The road bent sharply, and for an instant, the world opened into an endless stretch of crimson sky and shadowed forest. The moon hung low, heavy and fractured. I felt it then, the magic pulsing under my skin, answering something in him. My mother's blood, his curse, our bond. It all came alive at once, threads of light winding invisibly between us. Ethan's grip on the handlebars tightened, jaw clenched. Do you feel that? Yes. It's the curse unraveling. The wind screamed around us. The wolves were near. I could see their eyes flashing in the tree line, reflections of the same red moon that watched us both. I closed my eyes, pressed my face against his shoulder, and whispered the truth I'd been afraid to say. If I have to die to set you free, I will. His hand found mine, fingers cold, trembling. Then I'll break heaven itself before I let you. The road vanished into the darkness ahead, the moon bleeding brighter behind us. And as the howls rose higher, the bond between us burned hotter, the magic inside me fighting to decide whether it would save us or destroy us both. The night wasn't over. The curse hadn't chosen yet. And the blood moon was still rising. The blood moon had climbed to its peak when the storm broke. Wind howled across the mountain ridge, carrying the scent of rain and iron. The air itself seemed alive, vibrating with power so old and raw it made the earth tremble. We'd made it to the ancient clearing Amelia had spoken of, the place where the curse was born. Stone pillars circled a flat slab of rock, carved with symbols that glowed faintly red beneath the moonlight. I could feel them humming beneath my feet, the rhythm syncing with my pulse. Ethan stood at the center, breathing hard, eyes silver in the bleeding light. Every movement looked like it hurt. The curse was burning itself out inside him, devouring the man it had tried to cage. "This is it," he said, voice low, ragged. "When the moon turns full red, the spell completes itself." "Then we stop it," I said. He turned toward me, shaking his head. "Lena, you don't understand. If you get too close, it'll take you too. I'm already part of it." The wind caught my hair, whipped it across my face. For a moment, everything was silent except the pounding of our hearts. Then the forest split open behind us. Marcus stepped from the shadows, flanked by what was left of his pack. His clothes were torn, eyes feral gold, face twisted with rage and triumph. "Did you really think you could outrun what you are, Hale?" Ethan shifted instinctively, placing himself between me and them. His voice was calm but filled with warning. "It's over, Marcus. The moon's chosen." Marcus laughed, low and cruel. "No. The moon demands balance. One wolf falls so another may rise." His gaze flicked toward me. "And maybe this time, it'll be her blood that seals it." Ethan lunged first. The clearing erupted in chaos. Wolves surged from the treeline, snarling, teeth flashing under the crimson light. The ground shook with their weight. Ethan moved like lightning, faster, sharper, every strike precise. But there were too many. One lunged from behind. I shouted his name, raised my hand without thinking, and the air exploded. A circle of light burst outward, throwing them back. The symbols carved into the stone flared brighter. Amelia's voice echoed in my head like a memory. "Your blood is the key, Lena." It was never about ending him, it was about completing him. I understood then. The curse wasn't punishment. It was unfinished. "Ethan!" I screamed over the chaos. "It's not meant to destroy you, it's meant to bind us." He looked up at me, breath ragged, realization dawning in his eyes. "Lena, no." But it was too late. The magic was already answering. The light crawling up my arms wasn't fire, it was his energy, his essence, meeting mine halfway. Every heartbeat between us became one rhythm, one pole, one truth. The wind roared. Marcus shouted something, charging forward, claws outstretched, but Ethan turned, catching him mid-strike. The impact shook the clearing. Power rippled through the air like a living thing. "Stay down," Ethan growled, voice deep and resonant with something ancient. "This ends tonight." Marcus sneered, struggling. "Then so do you." The two collided again, a blur of motion and sound. I could feel the energy between them splintering, tearing at the edges of the spell that bound them both to this world. The blood moon pulsed overhead, each beat louder than thunder. And then I knew what I had to do. I stepped into the circle. The markings burned brighter beneath me, the glow crawling up my skin. The magic in my veins, my mother's blood, answered the call of the moon. "Lena, don't." Ethan's voice cracked, desperate. I turned to him. "You once said love was a curse. But maybe it's the only magic that was ever meant to save us." The world blurred. Every sound muffled, every color deepened to red and gold. I lifted my hands, palms open, and whispered the words that rose in my mind like instinct. "By blood and by moon, by bond and by love, let what was broken be made whole." Light erupted. Ethan dropped to his knees, the curse pouring out of him in a rush of silver smoke, spiraling into the sky. The wolves howled, pain, awe, fear all woven together. Marcus stumbled back, shielding his eyes as the magic split the night apart. The energy hit me like lightning. My body arched, breath catching. I felt my pulse slow, my vision fade, but I didn't stop. The spell demanded everything, and I gave it. Ethan's voice broke through the light, distant, raw. Lena, no, stay with me. I reached for him, my fingertips brushing his cheek. You're free now. The last thing I saw was his face, the anguish, the love, and then everything went dark. Silence. The storm faded. The wind stilled. The wolves vanished into shadow, one by one. Marcus was gone. Whether dead or fled, it didn't matter. Only Ethan remained, kneeling in the circle, cradling me against his chest. The light that had filled the clearing dimmed to a soft glow. His hands trembled as they brushed the hair from my face. Come back, he whispered over and over. Please, come back to me. When no answer came, he threw his head back and howled, a sound that tore through the night, through the heavens, through the curse itself. It wasn't rage. It wasn't grief. It was love in its rawest, wildest form. And the moon heard him. The red bled away to silver. The light fell over us like a benediction. And beneath it, a faint rhythm began, soft, hesitant, steady. A heartbeat. Ethan froze, disbelief carving through the sorrow. My chest rose, shallow but real. My fingers twitched against his. He pressed his forehead to mine, tears cutting through the dirt on his skin. You found your way back. I opened my eyes. The world glowed different now, sharper, brighter. I could feel his energy within me, the wolf and the witch intertwined. We weren't two halves anymore. We were one. The moon's light wrapped around us, warm, alive. Ethan's arms tightened as if afraid I'd vanish. I thought I lost you, he whispered. I smiled weakly. You couldn't if you tried. Above us, the moon shifted, its color softening back to silver white. The curse was gone, but something far greater had taken its place, a bond that hummed beneath our skin, eternal, balanced, alive. The wolves in the distance began to howl again, but this time it wasn't mourning. It was reverence. Recognition. Ethan looked down at me, his voice rough but sure. Alpha and Luna, he said. I met his gaze. Bound by the moon. The wind moved through the trees again, gentle this time, carrying away the last remnants of the curse. The night was no longer a prison. It was home. And as the dawn bled into the edges of the world, we stood together, no longer broken, no longer haunted, two souls bound by love strong enough to rewrite the stars themselves. Forever.